Hi, everybody. Welcome back. This is Cathy's week 23 on the carnivore journey. And I'm going to the gym right after this because I'm still sticking to my New Year's resolution to try to get in shape. And I'm actually doing a pretty good job of going to the gym. So that'll be something that we can kind of be Naomi's week 3, going to the gym as well. So Cathy, welcome. Good to see you again.
Good morning.
So we're going to just do half an hour going forward, guys. We'll go longer if there's something really big that we need to kind of unpack and it's more involved. But I think last week was half an hour, and that just felt like a good amount of time. And I think it's easier for people then to catch up with us. Less of a time commitment. People are really busy, and so I think it was last week, and we had that sort of surprising turnaround where we both started on the sardine fast. And then by the end of the half hour, we were no longer on this sardine fast, which I could not be happier about. Although I've had some comments. Cathy, have you read the comments below that video? There was some good suggestions about how to kind of manage the sardines to kind of make them better. I have not done it yet. However, I have not been experimenting with sardines. And the reason is that I got an iodine loading test. I think I mentioned last week that I'm reading The Iodine Crisis. And one of the recommendations is to get an iodine loading test to see, which is a 24-hour urine test. And you can't have any seafood for 4 days leading up to it so that you get a proper reading. So I'm really interested to see what the results are of that. But that's why I haven't done the sardines yet. How about you? What have you been doing this week?
I haven't been on strict carnivore, but it's been an interesting journey because I've been more analytical about where I am and why I've done the things that I've done and the choices that I've made. So the conclusion I've come to, and then I'll tell you an interesting thing that I learned this week. A conclusion I've come to is the first phase of me being not strict carnivore was emergency surgery. Shock, pain, trauma. That was the first phase. Okay. The second phase was I feel a bit of rebellion because I haven't been able to eat freely for years because of my gallbladder, right? And so when I was without my gallbladder, I was like, I can eat these foods and I'm not going to have this massive attack. So I feel like there was a little bit of rebellious in me of going, I'm going to have the foods I haven't been able to have for years, right? So there was that. And then this week, it's been pure indulgence and joy. So there was like 3 phases of trauma, rebellion, and then this week I've just enjoyed myself. And I have enjoyed myself and it's felt good, but it's also made me feel more in control of myself as well. Because with me, with anything, if I feel deprived, I can't do it. Like I just don't want to do it. So the thought of I can't have this, I can't have that has been sort of lingering in the background for me. But at the beginning of the week, we've had a really big week, and my husband's been home this week. I'm taking him back to the airport after this session. And we were out and about. I actually was really hungry, but there was nowhere around me where I could have really got anything quickly that would have satisfied me and all the rest of it. So we went for a coffee. We had one of our boys with us. And I thought, I'll just have a plain scone, just because I'm actually really quite hungry. So I had half a plain scone and the other half went to my husband. But I had it on an empty stomach. So I didn't have it as I'm going to have this as well as all my meat, right? Because I have been eating, my diet has been primarily carnivore, but I have had a few other things as well. And the interesting thing is I had that half a scone and I went into a hypoglycemic mess afterwards. So it was really interesting that because I had nothing in my system, I had no meat, no protein, no anything. And I thought that's really interesting to see that had the effect that it did because I had nothing else in my system. So that was kind of like a really good education point for me because I was like, that's really interesting and kind of cool that I experienced that because I can see that without the meat in my body, that's how my body's coping with that thing.
It also could be that as much meat as you have been eating and the 4 months that you did do on strict carnivore did heal you to the point where you now and teach you what kind of to be more in touch with your body's signals. Because that's what I wonder about me. If the responses that I had in my body when I was sort of tampering with carbs again over the Christmas period, was that because I had super sensitized myself to carbs, which I think a little bit it was because my gut microbiome switched over to the carnivore microbiome. And then suddenly I was having sugar and that threw everything out of whack. I think also that's why it threw my emotions out of whack as well, just by the way. But also I think some of it is that after over a year of eating carnivore, 13 months or something, 14, 15 months when I started experimenting at Christmas time, I think that I had just really become tuned into what my body was experiencing, whereas I hadn't before. Because, your whole life you're experiencing a certain thing. It's just your new normal and you don't expect anything different. And then suddenly you have a different experience, no inflammation and things like that. And then you do something that causes inflammation. It's like, wow, I'd forgotten what inflammation feels like. And so I think some of it is just that, that tuning in and getting more familiar with the things you used to take for granted as well. So when you say a glycemic episode, what did that feel like physically? What were the actual symptoms of it?
Well, I've always been a bit hypoglycemic. So it's that sort of you have the food and then suddenly you feel like shaky and desperate and that kind of thing. So I've always been like that.
Hmm.
And I would say that I've always been tuned into my body, but now it's more of a, that's interesting because I haven't had that for a while. So I've always been aware of it and aware that I
Hmm.
didn't like it and it wasn't great. But this time it's like, that's interesting because I haven't had that for quite a long time, which obviously ties into the patterns of, how my body's responding to what I'm putting into it.
Hmm. Still, so you're still eating a lot more meat. It's not like you're still animal based now, that's a big difference from before you started carnivore. You weren't animal based at all. You were like salads and little tiny bits of the lowest fat chicken and tuna and things that you could possibly do. So you've gone back over to eating high fat meat. And this is something we talked about in I think last week or the week before, because after your surgery, you're kind of scared to do fat again. And I believe that some of that was causing the issues that you were having ongoing, just exhaustion and not feeling like emotionally back on top. And I just wondered, because I think we talked about it and you were like, yeah, I'm going to definitely start eating more fat. Have you done that? And if so, how's that been going?
I have, but I really feel like this week my mind's been a little bit scattered because it's been a bit of a crazy week for us with lots of things.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my grown-up kids is going through a really massive time at the moment. So that has monopolized a lot of my bandwidth.
Mm.
Because even though they're taller than you and they're grown-ups, you don't stop worrying. And it's quite a big issue that she's having. And so I feel like, my husband's going back to work today. The kids are now back at school. Things are calming for everybody. So I feel like I need to do the reset properly that we spoke about last week, because I do feel I'm not feeding myself enough. And that's
Mm.
causing the extra complications. Because I think if I was fed enough and I was satisfied, the complications wouldn't be coming up because I'd be so satiated that I wouldn't even think about it. So I need to get back to that. You and I are meeting in 3 weeks' time. We're running an event together, and I'm going to be on
Yes.
stage at another event. So I'll be strict carnivore for the next 3 weeks just to get rid of any inflammation I might have picked up and really feed myself and get myself in top notch for that, because I'm running 2 events that week. So I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to getting back on top, as it were.
Yeah. So last week you had said that at the very end of the video, and you haven't been able to do it because of what's going on. We talked about you were going to prime for the next 2 weeks. So
Yeah.
that basically starts today, right? Is that the
Yeah,
idea?
I think I
Okay.
toyed with it last week. I toyed with it like I was better, but really reading my body when I'm full,
Yeah.
I don't think about food.
No, I know. Exactly. And that's one of the joys about carnivore. It's why the food noise goes away. But it does take, and I really feel even more like what you've just said, that this so much for you is like most people's beginning of the carnivore journey. You
Yeah.
had this weird, magical first 4 months where it was effortless. You didn't even have to do any of the things. Like one of the big things that people have to do when they start a carnivore journey. And this is what I had to do too. In fact, I stumbled across some planning in my notes app or something like that, that was back when I first started carnivore, like before I started it. it was all about how do I make sure I've got enough food, because I was panicked about what if I like what will I do if there's no ready food? Like I'll be so tempted to go and have something that isn't carnivore. And what also made me think of it, somebody offered me beef jerky yesterday. And I remembered I made batches of beef jerky because what if I'm in my car and there's no meat, kind of thing. And I was just so worried that I needed to have meat and it would be so hard to find. And so I'm way past that now because of McDonald's, and I know what to get at the big supermarkets, and I'm fine. I know that in a moment's notice, I can veer and I can go and get what I need. McDonald's only if it's after 11 a.m. though, because the quarter pounder patties, they don't have those before 11. So before 11, forget it. McDonald's has nothing for you. But from 11 o'clock on, they have the quarter pounder patties. But then again, there's like the supermarkets here in Australia, Coles and Woolworths, IGA, there's a deli section, and, there's like shaved roast beef, and you have to be careful about some of the other stuff, sugar and stuff. But, even if it's cured luncheon meats and things like that, it's still carnivore. It's not ideal carnivore, but it's still carnivore. So there's still things you can do. So I feel like you are at that starting point, but it's weird because you've got that 4 months on carnivore and the results you had from it. So in a weird way, you don't have that kind of bigger beginner fear that's keeping you like, okay, I got to be careful. I got to line this up. You've got this like, I'm carnivore, it's easy. And then you find, oh shit, I'm not actually prepared because I'm out and about and I haven't eaten enough. Like I know we're going to have this chat and then I'm going to go to the gym. I won't be able to eat again until 1 o'clock. Now, could I go until 1 o'clock without eating anything and be fine? Yeah, probably, but I didn't even want to risk it. So I had a big steak in the air fryer like half an hour ago. Was I super hungry? No. But I ate it because I knew that way I absolutely won't be like hungry and panicking about where I get something to eat. Because I still have that part of me that thinks I'm going to like die if I don't eat immediately when I get hungry, which is crazy because, we could go 30 days without eating if we had water and we would still like survive. But it's in your head, can't let myself get hungry. Oh my goodness. And so, yeah, so you've got this weird hybrid experience of I've already been carnivore for, I've done 4 straight months of carnivore, fell off it because of various reasons. And it's almost like, oh, I just snapped my fingers and I'm back carnivore again. It's like, nah, you got to do the start over. You've got to actually.
And I think that's a really, really important. I think that the thing that we've discovered together, that you need to do another 2 weeks of priming. If you've come off and you've undone, not undone because you're sort of ready for it, but I do believe like it took us a few weeks for us talking it through for me to go, I think I'm not eating enough. Like I'm hungry. I think that's one of my biggest things. And so priming, going back to that basic stuff of like prime for 2 weeks, really reset the old mechanisms inside, and then you're going to set yourself up for success. That feels like the right thing to do.
I agree. And I also think I would say even a step further, and I was thinking about this a couple of days ago, is based on something you said. I think it was last week or the week before. You said something about seeing if carnivore is the way forward for me or something like that. And the thought that kind of went around and around in my head. And I had this thought a couple of days ago that you can't see if carnivore is right for you until you do carnivore. And you hadn't really, other than like 3 days since the hospital, really done, carnivore. You've definitely eaten, like, what's great is that some of your habits from that 4 months of carnivore, like eating lots more protein and animal fat, that's continued, which is great. And that's definitely been a help for you. But I would say the priming for 2 weeks, but also the either whatever you can get your head around 30 days, because the fact that you said, like, if I feel like I'm depriving myself just mentally, this is why almost everybody, it was certainly the case for me when I started carnivore, after a year of watching videos and I was 100% convinced about it, I still could not wrap my head around longer than 30 days. I had to say, I'm going to do 30 days. And once I got to 30 days, I was like, okay, I feel like that I can grasp the idea of doing 90 days, but I didn't think I wasn't telling myself that I was going to do past 90 days. And so then that was doable. So none of that triggered that sort of deprivation thing. So I think that because you had that experience, and goes back to the fact that you were like an accidental carnivore, like you were an automatic carnivore when you started. In that 4-month period, and people who've watched the old videos will know, because they've seen all our conversations, you were like, that's it. This is it for the rest of my life. I've never felt this way. This is what I'm doing. But you're not there because you got there because it was either have horrible gallbladder attacks for the rest of your life or potentially not have them anymore. And so it was a no-brainer. Yeah, carnivore, no-brainer. So there was no little puff pastry or, a bit of candy or anything like that was even tempting to you. So that now that you don't have that big fear of your gallbladder, I think it would be helpful to go to the kind of framing that everybody else has to do when they start carnivore, which is just say 30 days, priming for 2 weeks, and then 30 days, no cheating. No, I'm just going to have a little bit of this. I'm just going to have a little bit of that, because that does interfere, because carnivore is 2 levers, lots of meat and nothing else. So it's definitely healthy to eat lots of meat. I think it was Ken Berry said 95% of the benefits of carnivore come when you go 100% carnivore. And so what do you think about that? Just saying because at the event, there will be full carnivore choices. You remember last year, I don't know if you were focused on it last year or in August at the time, but it was like carnivore paradise. I mean, there was no feeling of deprived or left out or anything. So anyway, at least for that event for the weekend, you won't be deprived. But what are your thoughts about that? Do you feel like that helps you wrap your head around it to just kind of do a 30 days?
Well, 2 weeks is good for me. Like, I've got to do what works for me. So 2 weeks at a time, I think, is more than enough for me. But also, it wasn't just my gallbladder. Like, I thought I had a heart attack at one stage.
Oh, that's
because
right.
my blood pressure was so high. So there's that. And also, I came across a photograph. I think we've done the photographs of me at the beginning, me a week in, and then me 4 months in. And you kind of forget where you were, right? Because things have got better. And so that was a good photograph for me to see, because I thought, gosh, I don't want to go back to that. I don't want to go back there. So that was good. And look, I've had my trauma stuff. I've had my rebellious stuff. I've had my indulgent stuff. And I'm like, okay, let's get on with the year now. Like, it's February. January in Australia is a nondescript month. Like, everybody's still on holidays. The kids are still off, so February is really where everything kicks in. And so I feel like, it's a reset for me. It's the beginning of February. Ian's back to work. The kids are back to school. And I'm just like, okay, I want to get ready for this event. And by Christmas, I would like to be looking in the mirror thinking, oh, I'm really pleased with what I see there. I feel like I've made big progress and I feel like my body has responded. And the only way to do that is to get back on the wagon, which is to go, and I'm just going to eat the next 2 weeks of, priming. I'm just going to prime and fill my body up to be successful, because you've got to set yourself up for success. And for me, being hungry it's a killer, because I'm just not good hungry. So I've got to plan again, be mindful of what I've got in. And because it's quite simple, actually, but you just got to get your head in the game. And obviously I cook a separate meal for my kids. And so it's making sure they've got everything. But I think I'm going to be okay, because there's nothing there now to interfere, because everything's cleaner. Like, my energy's cleaner, my environment's cleaner. So I just feel like I can do it, if that makes sense. But as I said, 2 weeks at a time is enough for me. So I'll see how I go after 2 weeks of priming, and then we'll go, do I prime for a little bit longer, or do I go to normal eating? We'll see.
Yeah. And for anybody watching this video that hasn't seen sort of the interviews and the chats we've had prior to this, we had talked about how all of the stuff that happened to you, like the Christmas and all the kids and, all the stuff going on, if you hadn't had that hospital experience, it's not like, so I don't want people watching this to think that carnivore is hard to do when you're going through tough stuff, but it is hard to get back on the wagon when you're going through tough stuff. And that's the problem, is that if you hadn't had that big derailment of that hospital stay where you couldn't eat for like 4 days, and then you had to eat hospital food because they don't give you a choice and they don't serve carnivore at hospitals. If you hadn't had that, yeah, I absolutely believe that you would have sailed through Christmas and you
I do
wouldn't
as well.
have. Yeah, yeah.
I was so planning it, Naomi. I was planning
I
it. I'd
know.
spoken to the kids. I'd done the whole thing.
Yeah,
And I
we
think as
tapped
well,
on it.
if I'd have come home from hospital and there'd have been someone here for me preparing my carnivore, I would have eaten it. No problem.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have said, "Oh, I don't want it. I'd have gone, amazing, great." But I came out, I was in pain, I was tired, I was trying to be there for the kids. I just, yeah, was very sore. And yeah, it was just one of those perfect storms. But it's been good as well because it gives you the contrast.
Yeah, it does. And everything you've experienced, you have learned. And a perfect example of what you just said, looking at the photos of yourself at the beginning, you did forget what that was like. And in my own journey, I finally weighed myself because I've never been a get on the scale every day person. Like I kind of avoid the scale and it's not the best indicator, but I weighed myself a couple of days ago for the first time in 2 months. And because I could feel that there was likely to be relatively not panicky, like not news that would freak me out. And I got on the scale and that whole period of kind of from October through where I had started eating more and eating butter, throughout the day and snacking, all that stuff I've talked about in previous videos, where I was still carnivore up until like 2 weeks before Christmas, but I was overeating carnivore. And so all of that stuff taken into consideration, I knew that I felt heavier. And I also know when you start working out at the gym, when you're building muscle, you can look every single time I've ever done it in my life, you look heavier for a few weeks because muscle is bulkier, but a muscle is also the engine. It's the furnace where the fat burns is in your muscles. So the more developed your muscles are, the more efficient your fat burning system is. So you just have to put up with that first few weeks of, oh my God, I'm bulking out a little bit. And then the fat on top of the muscle starts to get consumed by the muscle. And I feel like that had started to happen. I was like, all right, let's get on the scale. The total sort of damage done by those months in terms of putting fat back on me is hard to gauge because muscle weighs more than fat. But just my weight itself, I was up 1.5 kilos from back in September, which was like, I'm totally happy with that. It's, is half a kilo of that just muscle that I've now built. And that 1 kilo is the result of the fact that I've only kind of been back on track on carnivore for like 3 weeks or something like that. I don't know, but it was, positive reinforcement. And I do feel like I'm 100% back on the wagon. I have my carnivore brain back in where it feels effortless. It feels easy. I'm going num, num, num when I'm eating my steaks, and, the food noise is completely gone. And I've been around situations where there's been really kind of the kind of food that would tempt me. Normally, again, not even slightly tempted, not even seeing it as tempting, don't see it as food. So that's really cool. I'm excited about that. But another thing I just want to mention, Michaela Peterson just put out a video a few days ago. And people watching, if you've kind of came to carnivore because of Michaela, you might have seen this video. She was my inspiration, a lot of people's inspiration. The very first video I saw of her when she was talking about carnivore, I was looking at that video like this, like she was a circus freak. And what shocked me is although she seemed very sincere, so I kind of couldn't reconcile, she was saying crazy things, but she seemed sincere. And then reading in the comments, people going, I've been carnivore for 5 years. I've done it for 2 years. I've never felt better, blah, blah, blah. And that was like, whoa, wait a second. Because I thought maybe she's got some weird genetics or something that she can just eat meat and not drop dead. Obviously, the very beginning of the carnivore journey. She's been carnivore now for 7 years. She has just started to introduce some fruit and vegetables, and she's having no problems. So it seems to me that it is possible that when you heal your system, and some people need more healing than others. If you were heavy vegetarian, vegan, and had a lot of autoimmune things, and she had juvenile arthritis. So she was born with all of, you had juvenile Arthritis?
as an adult. So I got hit. That's what my Still's disease is. So it's adult onset Still's disease. So arthritis, it's a juvenile arthritis that hits adults. So that's what I've got.
Oh, wow. Well, she had like a hip replacement and a knee replacement or something before she was 12. So I didn't know you had that. Well, the good news is she's I think she says she's healed it. Like in the past, if she tried to introduce other things, it would flare up right away. But now she's started to introduce these other things, and she's not having flare-ups. She's also dealt with, she diagnosed, she has H. pylori and had a parasite and had to go to extreme lengths to get tested properly because regular Western medicine doesn't have ways to test for these things and doesn't take it seriously a lot of times, apparently. And so she thinks that also enabled her to be able to start eating some plants. So she's doing it very, very carefully. But I just want to sort of announce that as a light at the end of the tunnel for people who feel like that they're going to be stuck eating this way for the rest of your life, quote unquote, stuck. Some people go, I don't care. I'll eat this way the rest of my life. I don't care. And other people go, boy, it'd be nice to be able to kind of broaden my palate at some point. And I think it helps me to think of carnivore as a healing way of eating that you might not need to stick to faithfully for the rest of your life once you've healed, however long that healing takes. And so I just thought I'll leave everybody with that. And maybe I'll link that video below. And Cathy, I'll send you a link too, so you can have a listen to it if you have time now that things have kind of calmed down. But I look forward to speaking to you next week after you've been priming for 2 weeks. Or wait, no, 1 week into priming, and see how you go with that. And I'm going to head to the gym. You got to take your husband to the airport. Thanks everybody for watching. And please like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It really helps me and you'll get all the new videos in your inbox. I've got some other videos coming up that I'm going to do talking about different aspects of carnivore that I've been planning for a while. And one of them is to talk about all the different physical changes that I've encountered because I want to record that and note it before it becomes like Cathy, we're just talking about, you forget how you were before. So I figure I'm going to make a video about all those changes so that I've got that there to remind myself so that my new normal doesn't eclipse all the amazing results. So thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for being here, Cathy. Great seeing you again. See you in a week.
No worries. Bye.
Bye.